Peace everyone. Today I am going to be reviewing the Letraset Tria markers. Alright, so before I get into any real specifics, just want to show them off real quick. So on this end you have the standard broad tip, and on this end what makes these markers very unique and what I love about them is that you have this super fine tip, which is great for detail, and then beneath it you actually have the regular brush tip, which is really nice. Alright, so now I'm going to get into the specifics of why these markers are absolutely fantastic. Alright everyone, let's get through the boring part of this review. So the first thing that I'm going to look at is the price comparison to Copic markers. If you look at the Letraset on their website, you'll actually see that you can only get them in packs of 24, and those packs run at $88 a piece. So if you were to get 3 of those packs, 72 markers, that would run you at $264. In comparison to the 318 it would cost for 72 Copic markers. Now, I adjusted the price of the Copic markers because they have the Copic Chow and the Sketch. However, if you were to just look at the Sketch, which I think is the most reasonable one to look at because it's the best of the Copics in my opinion, it runs around $344 for 72. I took the average of all the prices. That's how I came up with 318. However, so the cost for the Letraset markers is $3.05 per marker, whereas for the Copics, it's $4.42. However, if you look at the markers individually, you'll see that the Letraset markers are $6.05 per marker, and I'm including shipping on that, because you can only buy these online in the United States. As far as I've seen, I've never seen them in a store. And the true cost of a single Copic marker is $5.24. Now, I hate to throw a bunch of numbers at you, but it's important to go over to the website itself. And the reason is when you live in the United States, you actually get a discount. And, well, it's not really a discount, it's because you don't have to pay value-added tax like the European countries, because these Letraset markers are made in Europe, specifically in England. This is where the significant price difference for the Tria markers comes from, because in fact, to buy 3 sets of 24 actually will only cost you $220, because you get a $50 decrease from the value-added tax. So once you go all the way through, like you're going to purchase the markers, you actually get the real price at the end. Also, on their website, orders over $33 get free shipping. So instead of paying $6.05 a marker, you can actually cut that down to $3.02 simply by ordering 9 or more markers. So in actuality, the best way to buy the Letraset markers is all of them individually, because you actually save 3 cents per marker as opposed to buying the sets of markers. However, I will take this even further and I will literally cut that price in half. I ordered my set of Letrasets off of eBay. These markers consistently sell on auctions on eBay for $1.14 or $1.15 per marker. I got 144 markers and I paid $1.15 for each of the markers. But in comparison to what you'll find with the Copics, you can hunt on eBay every day for the rest of your life and you will never find this price for Copics. The absolute cheapest I've ever seen Copics sell per marker is $3.73, and that was for an auction of 89 markers totaling at $332. So you're still going to have to chuck out a huge sum of money in order to get the Copic markers at a low price of $3.73. And still, that is less than $1 cheaper than if you were to buy the package brand new. The other difference in these markers is with the Letraset Tria markers, you only get 300 colors. And with the Copics, you get 358. But if you can't do what you need to do with 300 colors, you can't do it with 358. And besides, both of these markers are alcohol-based, so you could simply add any of the Copic markers that you wanted to your collection of markers. Now, there are two things I have to add about these Tria markers. The first thing is that they're hard to find. Now, you can simply buy them off their website as long as they're in stock, but you're not going to be able to walk into your local art store and find these as easily as you can the Copic markers. The other downside to the Tria markers is that in the United States, you actually can't refill them because the inks cannot be shipped overseas. I'm not sure about all the logistics behind that, but it does make it somewhat unfortunate, considering they're already hard to find. And obviously, you can find the Copics everywhere and their refills. Okay, now getting into a little bit more specific about these markers and how they work. So like I mentioned, they're all alcohol based, just like Copic markers. And this first chart I made with all 144 of my markers that I got, and I have to say that the colors are absolutely phenomenal. The coverage and consistency is equal to, or if not better than, the Copic markers. The next image is a direct comparison between the Tria markers and the Copic markers. Now, I only have one set of Copic markers, and that is the warm gray tones. And fortunately, with the set of Trias that I got, I also got the entire set of warm gray tones. The first thing that you should notice between these two is that they both blend exceptionally well. However, I have to give the upper hand to the Tria markers. They seem to blend just a bit smoother and more consistent than the Copic markers. They also tend to have less streaking in them. Now, for the paper that I'm using, I am using a Bristol smooth paper as opposed to marker paper because I intend to use colored pencils on top of my markers, and the marker paper is not going to let that happen. Now, moving on to the next picture. So here what you're seeing is I decided to color the electromagnetic spectrum just to highlight the vibrancy that you get with these markers. So yes, these markers are definitely a great deal. Now, I'm going to show you how well they work by doing a demo of this. Alright everyone, thank you for watching. I hope that this review was helpful in guiding you to deciding which markers to buy. I know that the Copic markers can be expensive, and though these markers can be somewhat difficult to get, I think they are definitely worth it, and in some cases might even outperform the Copic markers at about half the price. I do want to add that some people have claimed that these markers smell really bad. However, working between the Copic markers and these markers, I did not notice any significant smell difference. Make sure you subscribe and check out my other videos. And if you'd like to help my channel, you can become a patron on Patreon. And I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace.